readers who wish to pursue Douglas's narrative would be to keep an eye out for several themes that persist throughout his work. One I've already mentioned, and that is the theme of the violence that hung like a threat and an everyday occurrence to slaves. The second is Douglas's own self-motivation. He heard early on from one of his owners that it would ruin a slave to educate him. And that almost lit a fuse under Douglas, because he then determined that he was going to get educated at all costs. And he did. He basically taught himself to write, taught himself to read, and at the end of his days on the plantation, he used what spare time he had to teach other slaves on the Sabbath how to read and write. So the theme of how he educated himself and the importance of education in his ultimate goal, which was to achieve freedom, is one theme to trace through the book. The other is that for the first time, and this is a theme that will be picked up by other writers even into modern times, the notion that slavery demeans not only the slave but the slave owner. I mentioned that he taught himself to read. He had a very conscientious Christian woman, Mrs. Auld, who was the wife of his owner, who sat down to teach Frederick to read along with her own son. And it was her husband, Mr. Auld, who dissuaded her from doing so, saying, if you educate a slave, you've ruined him ever after. And she obeyed her husband. And when commenting on that, Douglas makes the point that here was a fine Christian woman motivated by Christian charity, trying to do some good to a young man who was talked out of it, basically because that's not the way the institution of slavery worked. And that idea that slavery demeaned both the slaves and the slave owners is a theme that will continue not only through this period, but well into the 20th century. Writers like Faulkner, writers like James Baldwin will look back on racism and how it hurts most of all, of course, African Americans, but demeans in its own way the racists who practice it.